Here. Rod Cruz.
Present.
Amy Grantham. Here. Nancy Hopper. Present. Katie Jess. Here. John Prouty.
Here.
Mrs. Smith.
Present. Would you all stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for all.
What is the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve.
Second. Okay. We have first two motions and 2 seconds.
Katie and Amy, and I'm drinking coffee.
Okay.
And given all of that, since I wasn't here, I'd like to abstain.
And otherwise, we have to vote for you to abstain. Do we have any other discussion? All of us, could you take roll call, please?
Chris Brown.
Aye.
Rod Cruz.
Aye.
Amy Grantham.
Aye.
Nancy Hopper.
Aye.
Katie Jess.
Aye.
John Prouty.
Aye.
Mrs. Smith.
Aye. You have before you the agenda. What is the pleasure of the board?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Brown.
Aye.
Rod Cruz.
Aye.
Amy Grantham.
Aye.
Nancy Hopper.
Aye.
Katie Jess.
Aye.
John Prouty.
Aye.
Mrs. Smith.
Aye. We have a special presentation. We have Mr. Tilden and Mr. Heaps.
Here, there.
Come on over here.
Okay.
I just reserved it.
You need the agenda.
Yes, if I could plug my computer in, that would be
How
wonderful.
about and
There you go.
You can plug in. How's that?
Perfect.
Aaron, how many do you have?
14. I counted right. I'm gonna see it
Yeah.
somewhere.
Goes both sides.
Sweet. Oh, look at that. Oh, I'm good. I'm just gonna. There we go. All righty. Extras? Does anybody? I was like, I'm pretty sure I counted exactly the right number. All right. Well, my name is Aaron Tilden. I am the senior project manager for Colorado, Kansas, and part of Nebraska for Millie Design Build. Appreciate you guys taking time to meet with us today. I brought along Colton Heaps. He's the director of engineering. Fortunate enough to have him here in our local Colorado office. So he was actually one of the engineers that came out and walked through the facilities earlier last week. So I figured to bring him out here and he can be here to kind of answer some questions. There are a couple slides that he's going to handle as well. So I want this to be kind of a interactive. Give me questions, comments, concerns, anything in the middle of the presentation. I just have a couple slides I wanted to go through. I wanted to leave some time to kind of discuss both kind of what we can offer for you guys and then us as a I'll hand off to Colton to kind of talk about what we did last week. And you can see the 8 facilities here. Just last in Westwood?
Yeah, so the 8 facilities included all the facilities that you had a previous engineering consultant design, some modest HVAC renovation work for 7 of those facilities, plus we also took a look at Lincoln. Just kind of convenient since we were there. System. Really to kind of confirm that initial work that the previous consultant had done, and also identified some more opportunities, some more needs that I don't think were fully addressed in that design, as well as kind of an opportunity to tie it all together into a larger kind of comprehensive effort that I think we can help tell a story district-wide about why these improvements are needed for the health and safety and ventilation requirements to better serve the students and which could leverage the funds we have available now through grants and other things to really size this project and address kind of some further needs than the earlier consultants had really planned for.
So kind of the path that the district had looked at going through is kind of illustrated here on the left-hand side. So kind of the typical procurement, what we see most times in school districts, especially in Colorado, is the design, bid, build methodology. So as far as construction goes, there's a couple different paths and a couple different ways to kind of skin the cat when it comes to construction. So pretty simple illustration here. So the left-hand side, you'll see the district has a contractual agreement with an AE firm, an architectural or an engineering firm. That architectural and engineering firm hands off their design to the district, but also to the next level, the next tier of individuals, which is the actual contractors. I think you guys went through that, kind of experienced some of the negative aspects of that. The AE firms, they typically they sit behind their desk, they come out, do a quick walkthrough, kind of get some feedback, but they don't really dive into the specific needs of the building. They kind of get an idea in their head of what they think should be done, and they usually put that on paper. They'll give you, they're not really estimates. I actually would rather term them as like guesses. They kind of give you a guess at what it's going to cost because they actually don't get involved much past the design phase, so they actually don't know especially what's going on in the market with the equipment side and the escalation we've seen over the last couple of years. They're not as intimately involved with that. So they put together a guess, they hand that back to the district then hires the contractors to do the work. Or in your case, you went out and got pricing and it was significantly more than what you were expecting. It's not atypical, that's pretty standard. The one thing I can say is you guys at least kind of stopped it at the right point. The next phase past that, where you start actually working with those contractors, the question that gets asked is an integrated project delivery model, is it more expensive? It's often referred to as turnkey work. Basically, you have a prime contractor, you can see on the right-hand side graphic there, you have Miller Design Build as the prime contractor for all aspects of the project. So you'll see the various different pieces. You don't have to read all the words on there, but basically we are in charge of literally everything and we are a direct partner with the district. So what happens is when we put together a design and we go out and we receive contractor pricing, we are responsible for all aspects of the design. And when we sign a guaranteed maximum price contract, there are no change orders. So I can say the integrated project delivery, people think it's expensive. The reason people think it's expensive is because if you went through a parallel path where you went on the left-hand side of the chart and the right-hand side of the chart, the day you sign a contract, I can almost guarantee you the right-hand side will be more expensive. You'll be like, I don't want to do that. The left-hand side leaves massive opportunities for each piece of the puzzle to have change orders further down the road. So, design was put together. Colton has reviewed it pretty in-depth. There was some even just discrepancies between the project manual and the actual drawings. So the contractors, when they're bidding that work, what are they trying to do? They're trying to get their price as low as possible to get you to pick them to be your partner. And then when you select that company and you say, give an example, we want 5 rooftop units at the Columbine Elementary School. And the project manual says 4. I'm not saying that happened, it's just an example. They bid the 4, right? But you want the 5. So then you go back to that company and you say, oh, we wanted 5 rooftop units. They say, oh, no problem, that's fine, we'll add it. It's gonna cost this much. And then also, now you gotta go back to the AE firm and say, hey, you only gave us specifications for these 4, we need it for a 5th. So then they change order. So it's that stacking process. The typical construction through a design bid build in this market is about 3 to 10% of the initial contract value is what that escalation from the beginning of the project to the end of the project looks like. So yes, the right-hand side on day one is inevitably more expensive because we have money in our budget that is very transparent to the district that is to afford contingency things. There's also some opportunity for, hey, you say, we want to tackle this as well. We can add that on as long as it fits in the budget. We can do that versus the other side. Everything you do is going to start being an additional dollar to the project. Questions about? I know it's kind of confusing there. There's a bunch of colors. I can get into what those are, but basically at the end of the day, it is we report directly to the district, and everybody that is below us, we have in-house staff for the majority, especially for all the needs that you guys have. But anything where we don't have that on staff, we will subcontract that out below us. They report to us, we report to you. There's one single source of accountability for the entirety of the project.
Guaranteed price, is that subject to
So
the, is that the cost?
that's a great question. I'll answer it here in a couple slides, but where we generate our GMP is a lot earlier than the traditional firms that work under this turnkey methodology. The typical thought process here, I'll just skip ahead. Typical thought process on the turnkey work is designed to what they call 100%, which is we're ready to start building tomorrow, right? And then they send that out to the contractors. And then they get feedback from those contractors at that point. That's too late. And I can tell you it's too late because especially in the market we live in today, we need to be able to order equipment literally as soon as we know what equipment needs to be ordered. So our process, right here, our process is we start on the left-hand side of this chart, which is our initial design, which is very conceptual, high level. If you could add a y-axis to this chart, it'd be the risk of the project, right? Super high risk because we don't know what we're doing right now, and very little value to the district. Every time we go through a design iteration in our process, we're lowering that risk level and we're adding value to the project because we're not just shifting risk, which is what the typical industry does. They say, I'm the designer, he's the contractor, I'm just going to shift that risk onto him, and then he's going to add his own risk, and you get this risk stacking effect. With ours, when we select our contractors, we do that early on based on our kind of schematic level, 70% drawings, where we know very roughly what the equipment is, where it's going to go, roughly what size everything is, and then we actually bring them in as our partner. So that target value design, second bullet there, is extremely important. You tell us what your dollars are, and you tell us what needs to be done, and we will make sure that as a team, us and everybody that's below us, design to meet that target. Best example I can give, Lewis County up in Washington. Oregon? Washington. Where's Lewis County? Oregon? Okay, thank you. I don't work up there. I'm pretty sure it's Oregon. You're right. We developed a $10 million project for them. They had $8 million to spend. They said, well, we only have $8 million. We were actually able to, through this process, work down to not 100% of what we wanted to do, but basically get to about 98% of the value of the project. But we cut out $2 million from that total scope, just from an understanding at the contractor level and us of this is what needs to get done and this is how we need to do it. Simple things. These are my $7 Walmart pants, I'm not kidding you. We like to get dirty. We like to get above ceilings, get in steam tunnels, whatever, doesn't matter. We find everything as much as we can. But we're engineers at the end of the day. We're not the contractors. I don't know exactly how they mount hangers for ductwork, things like that. When we bring them in and we say, hey, this is how it looks on paper, sometimes they'll just be like, oh, no. It's way better to do this, and this than that. So anything we can do to reduce that GMP, we do that earlier on. Now, that being said, you're saying, well, you're gonna have to add some money on top of that to make sure that you're accountable for everything. It's not necessarily true. So we break our contingencies into two different levels. So we have our internal design and risk contingency, that is money that will probably be used on the project for whatever. And then we have an owner's contingency that we strongly recommend you carry, which is we're gonna find things that I don't have X-ray vision, I can't look through walls, can't look through things. We're gonna find stuff inevitably that we're gonna say, this needs to get addressed, we don't have money accounted for that, and you get to choose how you want to spend that money. Now, there are some projects where that doesn't get used. When you use that for additional scope, you can absolutely do that, otherwise that money goes back in your pocket. That does not turn into profit for us. Does that answer your question? Okay, so, let's see, so that was basically the second two bullets there, the target value design and the early involvement from the construction team. The first bullet point here is also extremely important. So design conversation. That is basically, we strongly recommend you assign a project committee. It's not the most efficient to come to these board meetings every single time we want to discuss something about projects. So you designate a design team that can make kind of the smaller design level decisions. And then they are literally alongside of us for every decision we make throughout the design of the project. Instead of having one meeting, sitting down, and they say, this is what we want, this is what we want, we go away for 6 months, and then we come back and say, this is what you wanted, right? And we said, no, not really. You're close, but not really. So our process is very collaborative. We also like taking feedback from the building occupants. You guys are obviously the stewards of the district's money, you make the decisions, but there are actually people in these buildings. This is why I get up every day, because I make people's lives a lot better. When I walk in, who are we talking to? The gals at the Alternative Center at the Alternative High School. They were like, oh my gosh, you guys are gonna make this so much better. It's like, let's curb the enthusiasm a little bit. You know, we're gonna make it better, but it's not gonna be, you know, your office isn't gonna be 58 and your office isn't gonna be 90, you know, whatever you want. But yeah, we make facilities that people actually want to come to work. They want to be a part of. The students love, we try to find educational aspects of what we do as well, down to the student level of bringing them in and saying, hey, bring us into some of the classrooms, have us teach them what's going on, what energy efficiency, get them kind of excited about some of the construction industry things that we get excited about, and hopefully they do too. Any questions about this this is why this methodology works, and we're going to talk about a couple of folks around here that will also believe in the process and seen it full the way through. Oops, did it twice. And over to Colton, kind of talk about some of the projects in this area.
Yeah, so we want to just highlight a few of the many projects that we've implemented. Akron Schools, just up the road, obviously, we are in the middle of design, following a successful BEST grant application that we helped them through. A more holistic renovation of their entire mechanical system at their building. All of these projects actually are more intensive renovation than what we saw as needed at any of your facilities, really. But it just kind of speaks to the range of the types of projects and the clients that we do here in Colorado in your neighborhood. Logan County Courthouse, again, a pretty comprehensive replacement renovation of their HVAC system, as well as replacing all of the lighting, upgrading it to LED lighting. In Akron as well, for the Washington County government there, renovating an existing maintenance shop metal building that they had and doing an addition to it to create a emergency services facility, kind of housing both their ambulance service as well as their Office of Emergency Management into one facility that will be newly renovated and really provide them the base of operations that they need. Los Angeles County down in Trinidad, southern part of the state, we're in the middle of the design for that as well. Also very comprehensive renovation of a historic, 100+ year old courthouse building that all it's ever had is steam heat radiators
And
everywhere.
78 window ACs.
And then a bunch of window AC units everywhere.
I don't even know where they store them, to be honest.
So, adding cooling there, replacing it, providing them ventilation, mechanical, reliable ventilation for the first time in the history of the building. And Kearney County, Kansas, not too far over the state line. Also a courthouse and a pretty comprehensive replacement of their HVAC system. LED lighting upgrades throughout both of those facilities.
Yeah, Colton's a little humble. I'll throw a couple of kudos points his way. So, two of the projects up here, Logan County and Kearney County. We've both been doing this for quite a while now, and I can tell you the solution that we came up to at both those facilities is quite unique, because taking two distinctly separate facilities, the Logan County Courthouse and Annex, it's listed as one bullet point because they used to be two separate facilities. From a mechanical renovation standpoint now, they both needed replaced. There was nothing to reuse at either facility. They're about 30 feet away from each other. So we came up with the idea of why don't we tie these buildings together and make one system for two buildings. From a maintenance standpoint, you have one central plant. From a control standpoint, you get on the computer and you see both facilities. It was kind of an aha moment that we actually first did at Kearney County. And then when we were at Logan, we said, hey, you guys want to try this as well? And they were like, absolutely. Their facility staff was super on board. So it was a great idea. Just kind of shows that we don't provide cookie cutter solutions. Everything we look at is a unique building. Everything has its own different kind of differences. These facilities are not the same. You happen to have some facilities that are, from a blueprint standpoint, are basically identical, just rotated. Even that, we'll probably find a couple different solutions at one building versus the other. Any questions about those projects? And yes, all of those are working in the integrated project delivery turnkey. From a contractual standpoint, there's a couple different options here. Some of these are a design build project. The ones that don't have necessarily energy savings as a large component of, the ones that do have energy savings are through an energy savings performance contract. Questions, comments, concerns? So here's our team. We're a group of 23 individuals, primarily located in Kansas and Colorado. A couple folks up in the Pac Northwest and kind of our secondary market. You can see the folks that are kind of highlighted in yellow there in the border. That's kind of the team that we've assembled to address this project. We're able to work with the district. So you can see Amy McVeigh, she's our Director of Marketing. Myself, Project Development. Cole Heaps, Director of Engineering. Dan Nguyen, one of our engineers here in Denver. James Greason, he's not an engineer, he should be. He's about but he's our kind of CAD and drawing technician. Justin Pate is our construction administration gentleman out of Kansas City. Kevin Player, he needs like a gold star here. I can't talk enough about Kevin Player. Probably better time and place for this, but I will tell you, Kevin is labeled as commissioning. That is an insult. He literally is everything to you guys. Once the project is complete, he is your one person that will handle anything, and I mean literally anything. Clients that we have not worked with in 10 years will call Kevin at 1 o'clock in the morning and say, we got a problem with X, Y, Z, and he will absolutely help them. Our turnkey services that we provide, the day you sign a contract with us, you will never see a bill from us for anything for the duration of that project moving forward. So once we have completed the project is done for the paperwork, we're still going to be there for a long, long time to answer questions, help train both facilities operators as well as the staff that are actually going to be. And then literally anything happens, he's the one-stop guy. Great, he's awesome. Can't talk enough good things about him. Julie Kellerman handles finance. Brendan McEwen, he's our construction manager, so he'll actually be handling getting the subcontractors involved in the project, figuring out who's going to be doing the work. And then once we actually get to construction, you've got to have somebody on the site that is watching the contractors. Even if they are contractually bound to do one thing, I'm telling you they will do the exact opposite. Whatever is convenient for them is what they will try to do. So we have somebody on site at all times during construction, making sure that we did a design for a reason, right? We want it to be that way. Make sure that they actually do it the way we put it. So, and he actually lives right down the street, I think, not in Brush, but around Brush. So he's super close in the area. That's Bryce White on the right. don't need to go through any of these dots, but there's a bunch of dots on the map. That is places that our team has done work. Obviously, a large concentration in eastern Colorado and western Kansas, and then kind of like I mentioned earlier, the folks up in the Pac Northwest, and then a couple different kind of sporadic projects throughout the United States. We get some interesting calls. We just got a call from a church in Rhode Island. I don't know. I've never been to Rhode Island.
Personal connection.
Yeah. So kind of what we do, our umbrella of services, basically, you'll see, I believe it's your Mustang up in the top left corner there. That's basically where, what is going on? That's where we believe you're kind of at in this process. I know you had hired a consultant to do some, kind of, I'll call it high-level design, charged you a little bit of money for that. We really think we need to kind of take one step back and then take 2 steps forward and look at the entire district facilities in more of a holistic manner. The reason for that we're going to talk about here in a couple slides, but that will basically enable us to develop kind of conceptual level design and put together some project estimates. I'll hand this out if you guys just kind of want to flip through and then around. And then it'll give you a financial snapshot, what we think the project should cost. And I will tell you, they are still estimates, they are not guesses, but we are usually pretty good. We've done enough of these projects now, we kind of have an idea of what these projects should cost. We also literally stay up to date with all of the manufacturers, basically on a weekly basis. We say, if you guys have a price increase, tell us. They call us about every other day, unfortunately now, but we try to stay as up to date as we can on the market condition. The last bullet point on there, grant and external funding assistance. That is, I think, the biggest potentially missed opportunity of the plan that you guys have in place. You're basically leveraging the rest of your ESSER $3, correct? Roughly $2.2 million, and would have got $2.2 million of work done. There's potentially a better path to leverage some of that money to add some additional funds to the project to get some more work done. In talking to Mike and Mark, there's things that they're like, man, I'd really like to get this done. LED lighting for the entire district. It's kind of a no-brainer now. It's 2022. It's time to do that. Controls. They've started to switch to a new controls platform. It's a lot more energy efficient, a lot more user-friendly, better platform all the way around. There's several facilities that system is not in. If you don't do that as part of a more comprehensive project, you're going to have to find money to do that later on. So we want to find high savings, low cost items to leverage to figure out ways to pay for those more capital intensive needs. So once we bring that thing that you're looking at back and figure out exactly what your needs, wants are, then we can carve out a actual project or potentially multiple projects. We move into the design and contract procurement phase. So we will actually bring back, I should have brought a set, design documents that are literally every nut and bolt, piece of equipment, everything is nailed down. And like I said, that is also verified by the contractors that are actually going to do the work. So we will go through a competitive procurement. We don't turn wrenches. We don't have pipe fitters and sheet metal guys. We let the subs do what the subs do best. But we want to absolutely cause as much friction between those subcontractors as possible to drive that price down initially as much as we can. They actually, it's kind of weird. I work in like middle of Kansas, we call it Western Kansas, but like 6-8 hours away from Denver, and we can still get contractors to come to our jobs. As soon as you get up in this northeast corner of the state, for some reason, contractors act like you guys are so far away from anything, or oh my God, up there. But when we make the phone call, for some reason, they pick up. I don't really understand it, other than the fact that we do a lot of work, as demonstrated a couple slides earlier, so they know they want to be involved in our projects. We also remove as much of that risk, as we talked about earlier, from them, so they're able to deliver a much better project with a lot less uncertainty on their end. Being turnkey implementation. So we design the thing, we get pricing for the thing, and then we actually build it. So integrated project delivery, like I mentioned earlier, there's basically 2 contractual options there. There's the design build, which in Colorado is really a pretty good option for people that don't have high yield savings projects. in the energy savings performance contract, if you do have savings, definitely has some merit to it as well. Talked about all this stuff earlier. Performance. This is where, really good example here, Akron. Okay? So Akron went through a design bid build to build that building. They were told by the architect that the building was going to have cooling. When the architect hired an engineer, the engineer said the building didn't need cooling. That was never, it never went through the right path to get to the district. So for the last 12 years, they have thought they had a building that was supposed to have cooling. They have hired numerous consultants to come in and try and fix a cooling system that when we looked at, we found out is actually just a ventilation system. There is a difference. They tried to shove a bunch of very, very cold air by adding various different pieces of equipment and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars into this ventilation system that they ended up getting a water feature that they did not ask for. Every piece of equipment inside the school was raining in classrooms, and there was a thermodynamic issue that a consultant, again sitting at his desk, that didn't go out there and look at the thing, didn't find out. So, yeah, performance is key. I don't care how good it gets built. I don't care who builds it. It will not perform for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years, whatever, without proper commissioning. We have to test every single piece of equipment, and Kevin Player will not leave this site until every single piece of equipment is tested and it performs and functions the way it's supposed to.
You said that on tape.
I
I've had issues with that before, so I'm just really.
I mean it, and I absolutely mean it,
Okay.
because we're also engineers. He's an engineer. He's really good at telling people what needs to be done, but he also lives in Kansas. We're smart enough that he can call us and we can drive up here and do whatever it is. He also has such a good relationship with all the contractors in the area. When he calls them and they see, oh man, Kevin Player's calling me, it's like, it's urgent and they better fix it. Because we can dangle the next project. Hey, you guys didn't do very good at Morgan School, so we're not going to invite you next time. They do not like that.
May I ask you?
Yes.
Under planning, it says grant, and you talked about utilizing and expanding. So do you have your own grant writer?
So Amy McVeigh is our director of marketing.
I saw that.
She's very good at communicating.
Okay.
My dad is a professional grant writer.
Okay.
He has taught me a lot, and I am not the typical engineer, obviously. I like to talk. That's why he stands there and I stand here. So I'm not saying that we're like the best, but we're pretty good.
Okay.
We do have a gal that we use. She does kind of a final level check of all of our language. We just applied for a UFF grant, the underfunded courts for Los Angeles County. We think they have a really good chance of getting some portion of the $900,000 they asked for. He knows this better than anybody. Akron Schools, so they were working with another company. I hadn't stopped in there for a while since COVID. I had talked to Brian probably 2 years ago, and then we were working with Washington County, so I just was like, man, I need to go see what's up with Brian. So I walked in the door, and he was like, oh, we're working with another company. I was like, oh, that's too bad, man. I'd love to help you out. And we got talking, and then I found out that they were going to pay again to have another company try to fix the ventilation system. So very quickly, when I showed him on a psychometrics chart, which displays thermodynamic properties, why that was not going to work, he said, we got to get these guys out of here. And I was like, well, I said, have you thought about doing a BEST grant? Because they were trying to use ESSER funds. They had about $900,000. And that's what they wanted to spend. And I said, there's no fix in this building for $900,000 that's going to actually fix your problem. I said, it's a $3 million project to get it done right, and if you want to do it right, I'm your guy. And he said, well, the BEST grant is due in like 3 weeks. And I was like, oh, I was thinking like the next one, not this one. And he was like, well, is it possible? We did it. We absolutely did it. I lost a lot of sleep. We lost a lot of weekends, but in 3 weeks, they fired the company they were working with, they hired us, and we put together a best grant application, the two of us. That one, we didn't have time to have anybody review it, and we got six or eight, I don't remember, out of the 60-something applicants. We got the 6th or 8th highest score out of anybody. We're very good at creating a message that the best board can latch onto and see a need to create change in buildings. So, it's a great segue to this slide. So, we talked earlier, you have $2.2-ish million in ESSER funds that you can either spend $2.2 million and get $2.2 million worth of work done, or there's a potential to leverage some, probably not all, but some of the funds, the last bullet point there. You guys' 2021-2022 match was 39%, which for folks that maybe aren't as good at math, that means if you put $1 towards a project and you get awarded a grant from BEST, BEST would fund $2.56. So you get $3.56 worth of work done for every dollar that you pay. That seems like a pretty good deal. So we think there is absolutely a path. Probably in our initial, it's been only a couple days since we walked through all the facilities, but we think there's a path to potentially split this into 2 separate projects. There are things that BEST does not like to fund. So not everything that we want to do will be attractive to BEST. So we have to get very strategic in how we separate those projects apart from one another, and also demonstrate that the reason you're asking for more money to do those things is because you're obligating your funds to do other things that are also necessary, but don't have as much of an impact to student life safety, ventilation, things that are very attractive to them. Now, they realize that there are capital needs in buildings. So if you say, we're due for new controls, the life cycle of, I'm just making up numbers, life cycle of this type of equipment is 15 years, and we're at year 20. So we have to obligate our funds to pay for those things. But we also have this chunk of money that we need your help with to get more money done, or get more projects done. That is a compelling story. We have to figure out what the right scope is to do that with. But I think there really is a strategic plan here that instead of getting the 2.8, I think between the ESSER and then you're also funds to fund some other district stuff that's not, yeah. I think there's probably a path to do probably $6 to $7 million worth of work for similar obligation of your dollars. Right team to do it. So that is everything. The last thing I want to talk about is when we were going through the facilities, Mark, you had mentioned that you wanted us to take a look at the lighting out of the sports complex. We're doing, I don't know if any of you guys go to the Logan County Fair. They have antiquated lighting, like about everybody else does out here. They wanted to spend 1 point something million, I can't remember exactly, on new color changing laser light show, fancy, cool stuff. So I highly encourage y'all to go check it out when it's done. It's gonna be really cool. But I was like, absolutely, we've done sports lights, no problem. Well, we go out there and then Mike mentions, he's like, yeah, so, we built the middle school, which we understand there's maybe some code compliance things that we're kind of scratching our head about, why you don't have ladders to get to equipment. That's kind of, could maybe be a best item to say we don't have a safe way to service our equipment. Anyway, so we went and looked at the sports complex, and we understand that there is already some pretty hefty funds in place to potentially do some renovation work there. So the only reason I bring that up is because this slide gets multiplied by every different contractor. As the project gets more complex, this right-hand side becomes even more important. Because on the left-hand side, I only have 3 things shown there. I have 1 designer, I have 1 contractor, and I have 1 commissioning agent. On a project like that, you're probably going to have 4 or 5 designers. You're going to have somebody that, well, you may hire one person that says they're gonna do it all, but actually you're gonna have like 4 or 5 different designers. So, and then on the contractor level, you're definitely not gonna get one contractor that's gonna do the whole thing. You're gonna get a guy that does sports field lighting, and then you're gonna get a turf, and then you're gonna get, whatever, you get the point. So the right-hand side becomes even more attractive. The other thing is the right-hand side also does not require, per state statute, to take the low bid. The reason I mention that is because we love to work with what we call local contractors, which usually means regional. There's not necessarily everything here, right, for Morgan. But on the right-hand side, because you've hired us through a qualifications-based selection process, we then can literally show you all of the information to say, hey, we got a sports field lighting guy in, I don't know, Fort Collins, and we got another one in Corpus Christi, Texas. The guy in Corpus Christi, Texas is $20,000 less expensive, but he lives in Corpus Christi, Texas. Do you want to do that or not? And then we as a team select and decide whether we want to do that or not. So the left-hand side is obviously, there's a lot more push to go the low bid mentality. This guy was the low bid, we opened up bids, it's per the, this is what we put out. The right-hand side is absolutely more in kin with extremely complex projects. University of Kansas, I'm from Lawrence, moved up to Colorado in 2018. University of Kansas built their first new building on the campus around that time, around 2018, using design build. They said they will never go back because the amount of headache project, the amount of risk that was removed from the project, everything went so much smoother having one single person be responsible for the entire project. So any issue that they had, they pick up the phone and they call one number, and that person cannot say, that's not my problem, that's somebody else's. So bring that up, just kind of plant the seed of, I would very much like you guys to consider doing that. I don't know where you're at with that process, I don't know if you've hired anybody, but we obviously think we're the right partner, and I actually really like doing sports complexes. I haven't done one in a couple of years, but they're really fun, and we have a really good team that has the experience in it. Beth sent me some kind of conceptual drawings that were put together. Doesn't look like rocket science when you look at it from those like 30,000 foot views, but there's a million. Definitely is more in kin with what versus the left-hand side that I will promise will end up exactly like Akron schools, where they think they get something and something gets cut and the project ends up costing $20 million. I don't have like a clock. Usually I'm like looking at a clock, so I have no idea if I'm overtime, on time. I don't know what you had slotted, but
It took 20 minutes.
Great.
So,
That's awesome. I think I told you I needed 15 and then like 10 minutes for conversation.
12 at the least.
Apologize, I thought, I was thinking of Lane County, which is.
okay. I'm not crazy. That's what I said originally, right?
Let's not just across the river.
I think it is actually just across the river. We're also working with Island County, which is also, that's Washington,
like-
yeah.
That's outside the city.
So anyway, questions, comments, thoughts? I did see a lot of this going on and very little of this. So does everybody kind of understand why we do what we do and why we do it? It's not just to be flashy.
Question about Plan B.
Well, we understand you're looking at, we would be looking at a best grant opportunity. We know those are due probably after the first of the year between January.
Fortunately, yes.
Yeah, and they usually announce those,
June.
I was gonna say May or June.
Yeah.
So.
You get funds in June, sorry.
Right, so if that was to, if we were not selected for that what would a plan B look like? How would you kind of go around that
So-
option?
That document,
Yes.
right, starts with a laundry list of this is everything, if it needs to be addressed in the next 5-10 years, we're gonna put it in there, okay? The next level from that is paring down the wish list to the very high needs, lesser high needs, we can totally wait on these things. So that effort, we can preemptively, but I almost hesitate to do that because I would rather like literally push pretty strongly on Best. I mean, you guys are a pretty prime candidate. You have not done much in the way of mechanical renovations through Best for a long time. So they think you have the need. I think we can convince them that you have the need. But we absolutely will figure out what that potential lesser project looks like. I still think it's not going to be potentially that 2.8 million. I think there's some opportunity to leverage some savings. You guys have not touched LED lighting other than the exterior of most of the buildings. We're going to save you a lot of money. And I mean, if you look in the packet that I put together, Logan County saved $100,000 a year, and they leverage that to pay for a lot of capital improvements that had basically no savings. So I think that same opportunity could be present for you guys. We have to do the engineering first to tell you that for sure, but if you have decent utility rates and if you operate your buildings as typically as most people do, I think we'll be able to find some pretty good savings. So maybe it's not a $2.8 million project, maybe it's a $4 million project. It's kind of the middle of the road. But I don't like to just plan for the worst case. I always like to try to push the envelope a little bit. And I always tell people, especially when you're doing these types of projects, these are not projects that you're going to do every year. These are projects you're going to do every 10 years. So when you do it right. Make sure that if there's something you want, tell us, and we will figure out a way to create a path to make sure that you get it done.
Question I have, and the ESSER $3 have to be spent by September 2024, and if, let's just say we have to go Plan B, do you feel confident with the way the supply chain is right now that we could have that done and expended in that time frame? Because we either use it or we would.
September of 24, right?
September 30th, 2024.
So this is where it even gets down to not just selecting the right system, but selecting the right piece of equipment. So we were working with the county up in Nebraska. Unfortunately, they decided to go a different route. But they said, we need cooling by next summer. Seems like a long time away. It's really not in this world. So we had called 10 different equipment manufacturers, and we had figured out down to the specific model number, tell us what the lead time is for this piece of equipment. That's another perk of working with a company like us, is we do not sell equipment. So you tell me, he tells me I like, what you use? Daikin. You like Daikin, right? Cool, so do I. Like, if I actually don't like it, I'll tell you I don't like it, but I don't care what you get. We can do that same thing to say, this is the equipment that you need. We will reach out to every single vendor and we'll say, hey, this is the one we would recommend because they have the timeline. It might be a little bit more expensive to get it, but what we had found up at that courthouse up in Nebraska was there was a very premium chiller that they could guarantee us that we would have by that time, and it was about $20,000 more than a more kind of typical lower level efficiency unit. So if you want to spend $20,000 to guarantee it, absolutely, and we can find out which pieces of equipment are going to fit and which ones aren't. That timeline's not.
Short answer, yes.
Yes.
Whether
Yeah.
it's the best that we have to kind of scramble.
Under both scenarios.
Under both scenarios, I'm confident that we can get that money spent for September 20th.
So worst case scenario, and it is just 2.2 million that we have to spend, do you think that's gonna help most of our buildings stay safe in the next?
Be tough, I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna be tough. The only reason I say that is because the plan that was put together, was addressing very specific areas of buildings. So to make a statement about a building as a whole, that's challenging. There are things that we can do even though, like the buildings that have the newer control system, there's a lot more flexibility to do some kind of more advanced control strategies, some increased ventilation rates, things like that. So there's a bunch of like checks that we can do and find out, are there literally some like free measures that we can put in place at some of your buildings to try to help with that. We just have to kind of dive pretty deep into what you have, how it's being operated, et cetera, to figure out what those are. But if you would have spent the 2.2 on the plan you had in place, I'll tell you that really wouldn't have done a whole lot.
And frankly, even if we're successful with the best grant we get, turn that HVAC project into a $6 million project or something, we're limited by physics, by the amount of existing equipment that we're not really changing in terms of how much additional ventilation air we can bring in. That's just kind of an unfortunate reality. And you can do a little bit to increase filter thicknesses before you are taxing the motors on machines. They can't blow through the filter anymore. So, we'll definitely kind of look at those kinds of options if that's the. But we would be kind of limited just because there's so much existing equipment across all of your existing buildings that are not really getting addressed in this project. So.
Almost all of these are wholesale replacements, except for Akron. Akron is actually very unique. Akron is now going to have 3 unique systems. They're going to have. Never design a building to have 3 separate systems like that, but actually from a performance standpoint, it's kind of a dream. It just happens to be that their ventilation system needs very minor improvements to make it function as a ventilation system. It barely needs any work, except for, I have a picture in that Best Grant application of January of this year, snow on the ground outside, the thermostat says 85 degrees, and there's a portable air conditioner blowing in the classroom. I'm not kidding. So they have an in-floor radiant heat system that the valves, a lot of them are, this is where commissioning comes in. They're literally a classroom next door. So when the lady turns up the thermostat in her room, she's actually changing the room next door. You remember those? Yeah, those are not fun, right? So commissioning would follow that.
I think there were some valves that were installed backwards as well.
Yep. So when you say it's shut, it's open.
It's actually opening it, so if someone's went to turn down the heat, then it's actually turning on the heat.
Anyway, yes, all these are wholesale replacements. Yours are more targeted efficiency measures and kind of replacements. So we'll have to get creative on how to make the impact more broad across the facility than just the kitchen and the locker room and whatever.
I do want to say, going into this, we didn't want to just take what the previous engineers had done and say, yeah, we should just do that, but more of it. I thought maybe it's a better investment maybe to focus on 1 or 2 buildings and do a deeper, overhaul or renovation of the mechanical system, say at the high school. You could spend the whole $6 million project at the high school, right, and get a whole new mechanical system pretty much. But after looking at the facilities, a lot of the equipment is very well maintained to a credit of your maintenance staff. The projects that you've done so far, I think has been money pretty well spent. The boilers across the district are great. The contractor that you hired to do that did a great professional job. The way that it was designed and laid out with many multiple kind of smaller boilers that allow staging and switching out boilers pretty easily. Very good practice in engineering and installation on those systems. So after looking through these facilities, I don't see one facility that's just really standing out and like, gee, this whole thing needs to go. We need to replace that whole mechanical system. So, and that's a credit to you all and the decisions that the district has made, investments that you've done in the past, and your maintenance staff in keeping that all working pretty well. It's just there are some that are, kind of at the end of their life. At the high school, big air handlers that were installed in these tiny, that they can't even, I mean, you
Can we do a show and tell
have to
someday?
crawl over the top of them or underneath of them to maintain them. Pretty bad situation on some of them, but for the most part, I think you made some really good decisions, keeping the buildings working.
Also, Mike has spent, what now, 3 days walking around with us. I mean, we do not walk up to the building, take a picture, yeah, looks cool, all right, no, we spent at least a couple hours at every single facility, and this guy knows these buildings in and out. I'm serious about the show and tell someday about the high school air handlers. There's one of them in particular.
That's the fault of the original architect.
Yeah, not you guys. Like, most of you are slimmer than I am, but you probably fit. But anyone my size or bigger, you're like, get to the filter that's on the backside, or you crawl over the unit, which is not how you're supposed to do that. They did not have the foresight to say, they figured out how it would fit and how it can be installed, which is like half the equation. But then you got to operate it for 25 years, 30 years. How old are those? 30 plus, right? So the answer, by the way, and the access is it's a hole, ceiling about this big. So how do you get a unit that's the size of that projector screen out of a hole? That's not a square peg in a round hole situation. That's like way worse than that. But anyway, we're going to create some solutions that do not involve those air handlers, probably, because they're. So.
Do you have any questions? Does anyone need any more discussion, or are we thinking?
I guess like the ask, because there's no financial obligation, the ask is to let us develop that for you. And then,
Has our name on it?
yeah, and those are hand-drawn by our marketing director's son, who's at some art school in like Pennsylvania or somewhere, yeah, somewhere cool up there. So yes, you will get a hand-drawn version of that, and you can put it wherever you want it. That's kind of our little gift from us to you. But yes, we would like to develop that, which people always ask how much does it cost. It does not cost anything. We have a pretty high conversion rate of finding a project that can be done. We are not the folks that are going to say, here's a $10 million project that needs to get done. Take it or leave it. That's not us. You tell us what you want to spend, what you want to achieve, we'll figure out a way to do it. The next evolution past this, once we develop that, is to put together the best grant application, which is a little bit more in depth, and it can be done apparently in 2.5 weeks, but I'm not promising I'm going to do that again. At that point, we would probably recommend that we will have the district will have gone through a competitive selection to have formally selected us as the partner for the project. That also does not have any financial obligation. We will then apply for the grant with the district. And then if you decide to move forward with any of those projects that we've carved out, either the best option or otherwise, then you would have basically a design services fee to allow us to actually go do the design and get final pricing. And if the building gets taken away by a tornado, then you would pay us that fee as a walk-away fee. So basically, not have to make any kind of payment to us until we've basically secured either the best grant or figured out what the other project looks like and are ready to actually put pen and paper to the design. Sounds too good to be true, but it's not. A lot of people say, yeah, pick us and now pay us, like right now. Play the long game. We want to be your partner literally for, I mean, if we get a best grant for you guys, till the project is done, right, is probably 1.5 years from now. I mean, we're not the get in, do our work, get out. We're gonna be your partner for a while, and we like seeing change. I mean,
Do you know what the fee amount was?
it's difficult to say.
We don't really know the shape of that project yet.
Yeah,
The project?
to give you a rough estimate, Washington County's total project is about $2.5 million. And their design fee, which keep in mind, that's a ground up, brand new building. So architectural, civil, structural, mechanical, plumbing, like the whole works. That was I think it was about 10% of the estimated project total. So $250,000-ish. But that gets us to a point that we've ring final actual guaranteed pricing where the contract is inclusive of that $200,000. It's not on top of the estimates that you saw shown in that book there. Perfect. I don't, yours might not be that thick. Those are, I mean, did I give you Logan? No, Carney and
It
Washington.
doesn't matter, I expect a great book.
It'll be a really good book. And it's so good that if you have any like little kids, you can start reading it to them and force them to sleep immediately. I promise. It's really boring.
I think one of the things, and I apologize if you're gonna get to this, but I think has to notify CDE of your intention to apply for the best grant
That's right.
by the end of this month, so that's,
I've already been in contact with Jay,
okay.
and I've talked to him about
You guys. Jay's great. I can't. We very much thank Brian at Akron because apparently him and Rob go way back. And at a meeting I was having with Brian, he said, "Oh, by the way," he said, I think more trying to do something." He said, "Yeah, let me call Rob and have him give you a shout." And I will never forget this, Rob. He called me and he said, "Hey, we got these drawings. Will you bid it?" And I was just like, let's take a half step back here.
Close.
But I think this path will be very beneficial to the district. Thank you.
Drive safe.
Absolutely. Y'all buy your Powerball tickets yet? I just went to Maverick. That better be the hot spot. Somebody tell me otherwise.
Okay. Don't buy one.
Yeah, we're planning on selling.
I've actually never bought one before, but I was like, $2 billion? Like $2, sure.
If you win, are you still? Yeah, really.
I might pay for your project. Is that on the recording too?
Yes, it is.
Oh, I'm toast. I'll be in the Bahamas.
It's gonna be on the radio. It's gonna be on
Audience, is there anyone who would like to publicly comment on anything? On the general reports, and first off, we have our Fort Lauderdale High School student representative. Do you want to say that?
As fall sports have come to an end, I would say that all of our high school fall sports had a decent season. First round of playoffs, where they fought to continue against Silver. We were featured. And I'm sure they will continue to cheer into the next. Boys and girls basketball has been having their open gyms and their season route as well as their wrestling teams. Following sports, their FMHS theater department is putting on 2 of their fall plays. One act play that goes wrong and Dystopia on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at 7 p.m. and there will be tickets at on Saturday, November 12th, SCCLA, a club at FMHS show. I think it's from 8 to 5 p.m. where there will be vendors and we just. And then finally to close off November, FMHS the dinner and that they can have a home cooked meal as well as just for members in the community who like to get involved can come. And out to people that would like to come or would like to help with Oregon High School on Wednesday the 23rd from 5 to 7.
Next up, we have board reports. I know that Mrs. Nancy Hopper has something.
So there's 4 documents in there. On October 21st, 22nd was the Fall Delegate Assembly that was held in the Denver area. And so what I've done is I've kind of given you the report if we want to open the Fall Delegate Assembly one. It's a 2-day conference, and so you'll see that the workshops and the opening speakers. I could listen to Dr. Brooks talk all day. It was amazing, her story of the time when schools were segregated and first memories of school and your upon leaving high school and were you ready? And so that discussion was really interesting to be a part of. Talked about effective evaluations, and so that was one of the workshops I went to, and so I just kind of looky-loo, which kind of fit in with some of the work we were doing, our work here. We had a networking lunch, and so you'll see the areas that were there. We had a pretty big group. We have 14 districts in Region 1, and so a good showing of individuals that made it. The next breakout was investment in action, and so that had to do with the ESSER 1 money. And so they went in and showed us how we could get a report of how our ESSER 1 money was spent, and I've uploaded that document for you as well. I'm going to go into that site and see where our money, everybody here in the office probably knows all of that really well, but anyway, it was kind of fun to look at the document and see how our monies were spent. So that's there for you. Bittner from Norwood School. A lovely picture here of me with this kiddo, and he looks like he's 15, and I was sitting at a table with him, and somebody asked him what he was doing there, and he said he was had just got on the state school board a year ago. He's on the board for Sierra Grande, and I said, well, I need my picture taken because I don't think I've ever seen a school board member who's 20 years old, and he was at the workshop and went through everything. Had a president's reception always on the Friday evening, and it stated right there 21 and older, and so bless his heart, he's really dedicated, but he could not. I thought that's dedication. And so then these are all the legislative resolutions that went through. So I put what was passed, what wasn't passed. Most everything was pretty smooth going. I put in red there a little bit if there was a discussion of what that entailed. And so I thought Resolution 14, Montezuma Cortez had brought this one forward, and it was amended for students receiving life skills instruction instead of those students only being self-contained, and I thought that was a good amendment. But going through all of those, of course, the last 3 were probably the most contingent. So Resolution 29 from the National School Board Association, and 30 and 31 were postponed. 31 had a lot of amendments to it, and one was extremely lengthy, and you can't get all of that content. So these 2 were postponed and placed at the regular board meeting at CASB at the winter conference coming up in December. And along that line, this Wednesday, I'll be going to Lyman for a Region 1, 2, and 3 discussion about the needs of rural communities, rural school boards, and so forth. And so that'll be fun. And then the last thing I have is tomorrow from 10 to 2, I'll have a Zoom meeting. And I was going to get with you, Mr. on House Bill 221376, and I think it has to do with the that they're looking at. And I decided not to meet with you because this first meeting we have, first one is really going to be preliminary and go over. So I think it would be more conducive if I figure out what we're doing before I meet with you. And then I'd love to pick your brain. So sometime in December. And I think that's all I had unless someone had a question for me.
Superintendent report, Mr. Sanders.
I'll be quick. Technology, I just wanted to mention that we had Brian Amick out on his 30 days. Right now we have Sam Hopper, who's agreed to take on the technology. He's in back there. He's recording all of this, but he's been a great help in that transition and a pleasure to work with. So the other thing I wanted to see, it's not on here, but we kind of talked about it. If I can get a thumbs up on moving forward with this with Lily to see if we can get them started. Have to have an official board action for the best grant. I'll bring it to the next meeting, and that way we want them to get started if that's okay. Thank you. Unless you have questions, then.
Moving on to discussion items. Discussion item A is a school health professional grant. That was you.
I know, just when I said I wasn't applying for any more money, the opportunity just arose actually just recently. So we've had the school health professional grant actually for quite a few years. I thought that we got an extension year, so they gave us funding enough to keep our gal Bernadette Bota. She splits Lincoln High School, Fort Morgan High School, Fort Morgan Middle School, works with kids with substance abuse, and it's kind of ebbed and flowed into kind of mental health and all of those things. So there are some federal dollars that they just rolled out, and it is worth us applying for. I think it will just be basically for salaries and benefits for an additional year. And so I'll just be submitting that paperwork to this to the state. It's actually a tie-on to some sort of ESSER somehow money, but it's okay. I think it's worth. It's been a really beneficial position, I think, and our kids have been pretty receptive to getting help and support with tobacco, marijuana, vaping, you name it. Kids are getting support from her. Questions?
Next on our discussion items, the Fort Morgan High School Athletic League change.
Oh, those guys, that was the presentation they had. A couple at our October athletic director meeting approached that they're changing leagues again. Shasta lights are changing leagues, making competitive. A lot of our schools in our league, they don't like to come out here. Okay? Morgan has always kind of been the forgotten child. Even though I've only been here a little over a year, I know a lot about Fort Morgan, and a lot of schools don't like to come up. So they presented me with joining the Patriot League, which is a Platte Valley, Strasburg, University, Resurrection Christian, Valley, Weld Central, Estes Park, Liberty Common, Timnath, and Wellington. They don't want Estes Park in their league anymore. And that's okay with us because that's over a 2-hour drive for us to go out there. I looked at some numbers. As of now, every single one of our league, hour or more, up to an hour and a half drive. Transportation has become an issue everywhere. It's not just with us, but Denver schools, all the schools are running into transportation. at the league that they would have us in, which includes Brush, which is 9 miles and 11-minute drive. Sterling is 46 miles, 45 minutes. Platte Valley is 44 miles, 41 minutes. Eaton is hour 1, University is an hour 2, Resurrection Christian is an hour 12. Valley is 59 minutes, while Central is 43 minutes. Common would be an hour 24, and Strasburg would be an hour 7. This is kind of something that we may not have a choice in. At our meeting last week, we met with several leagues of the other northern leagues. We were basically pushed out of every 4A proposal that everybody had. So I know the question is, if we play in a 3A league, when it comes to playoff time, how will we compete? And I will say that football is its own different animal. Football is totally different. They base that on what the schools are and your like numbers. That's kind of totally different. That's throwing football out. It's putting every other sport. Looking at one of the things CHSAA has done is they do an RPI rating. That's how you get placed in your for playoffs. And they used to have it where if you played we're a 4A school, we played a 3A school, they subtracted some of that, you know, your RPI. It's all mathematical. I'm a social studies guy. But they used to do that. Now it's a straight RPI. So if we were to play, let's say we were to play Wiggins in volleyball, okay? Our RPI, because Wiggins is very good in volleyball, that would help our RPI rating because they are very competitive. Help us move up in our RPI. RPI is based on your record, your opponent's record, and your opponent's record, okay? So figure that calculation out. So my feeling is, I think this is a very competitive league. Eaton, University, Res Christian, they're always competitive in just about every sport. Sterling is somewhat of a rival. Brush is a rival. I think it's very competitive. I think it would benefit us. Again, we may not have any say in the matter, but when we go to scheduling, one of the things we look at, and I'm planning on being here for a while, make some good connections. When we do our scheduling, a third of our schedule is the league. Okay, then we do another third of the schedule of winnable games that help us, and then the last third is we find the tough competition. And so there are still schools. Roosevelt still wants to play us in volleyball, basketball. Northridge in Greeley, which is just over an hour drive, they want to play us in some sports. We would be able to still find some good competition in our non-league schedule. So that's kind of where we are. It's going to be up to CHSAA on what they want to do. They do talk about your free and reduced lunch, but I don't think they really ever take that into account. Basically, we're going to be the largest school, and by no means would we walk through this league. People may think we could just walk through, whatever. It's not. It's a very tough league, and I think it would quite well for playoff time. Most of the coaches like it. Again, we take football out of it because that's totally different. And I think our girls sport coaches really are for it because I think our girls sports are down. We're really trying to build them up. And I think this would help maybe get some more girls out in some sports. Particularly volleyball had a good year this year with the new coach. Like to get into this league. Basketball definitely wants to get in this league, both boys and wrestling, I think, is already in a similar league. We already play or wrestle, we already wrestled, before Lupton. Soccer, I think, the boys soccer could be tough because they would do pretty well in this league, with our soccer team. Girls soccer, I think, would benefit from it. So most of the coaches are for it. Josh Langford is kind of on the fence. He's not sure, but, he tries to schedule a university every year, maybe in Eton. So he's playing that competition, so he knows, but most of the coaches are for it.
When I was an athletic director, it was a league vote, and then it was final decision.
Which
based on the vote of the league.
Yeah, basically Chassa does make the final decision, but yes, it does come down to a league vote. And as of right now, I can tell you there are probably 3 teams in the league that would like us to stay and don't have anything to do with us.
That's because
Well, here's the funny thing, and transportation, like I said, is an issue, but here's the funny thing, living in Denver, I lived in Lakewood, which closer to Golden, and I coached at Regis Jesuit High School, which is down in Parker. It would take me an hour and a half to get to practice, and it would take me on the time, if I got back during the rush, if we got done during rush hour, it would take me 2 hours to get home. If it was after a game, it would take me 45 minutes. So what I try to tell these other schools is, especially the ones that are, Frederick, Riverdale Ridge, they're the easiest ones for us to get to. Like you're right down I-76. If you were to go down and play a Denver school, it would take you just as long, and you would have to go through traffic, and everybody knows how stressful it is going through traffic. But they don't really kind of see it.
So, quick question. So like on those sports that we are playing in, they were classified at 4A according to Chassis rules.
Mm-hmm.
Playing 3A teams, and then we'd have to go find 4A teams to play.
Yeah, we'd have to find 4A teams.
Plus there's 4A players.
Plus-
Yeah, we'd
plus
have to
we-
play in the 4A.
Plus we'd be in 4A playoffs. So, yeah, that's, and I looked at, we were in the Colorado 7 a few years ago. I think pretty well in the Colorado 7. I don't think that was a very competitive league. Got to playoffs, it didn't help us. I think at least with this, find that 1/3, we can find the 4 or 5 games in these other sports where we can play the top teams.
Issue I had is last time we left and we formed that Colorado 7 league, that person.
Yeah,
So if we make that jump, make that move, odds of getting back are slim or none.
well, and Chassa would step in, and I'm curious to see because, Chassa always has their own thinking. And I think, and the commissioner was at our meeting last week, and I had a chance to sit down and talk with them. I think this is the league voting us out, basically not including us in anything, so it's not us leaving the league. It's them basically voting us out, and the Patriot League schools want us. They want us, and which I think is a good thing, at least we're wanted. And I think that's a good thing. They would like the competition because I think we would be competitive. The 24-26 cycle. I think that if it came down to it, Chassa would step in and say no. Problem is we're on the lower end of it with all these schools around here, but that's kind of what you have to deal with. So now we'd be on the higher end.
So if we say, no, we want to stay where we're at, Is there a process to keep that in place?
I would have to go through with CHASA and tell them this is what we're looking at, this is what we want to do. I think, I don't know how receptive they will be to it, but I would certainly fight for it because personally, I would like to stay in the 4A league. But I will say, with what we are doing and what a lot of the other schools are doing, we're getting our coaches, and I myself have gotten the small bus certification to drive our kids around. I don't like particularly our basketball coaches after a game over an hour, because when you're a coach, you're mentally drained from the game, about the game, and to have to drive those kids home, it really worries me. Have to really kind of take your mind off the game and get yourself, that becomes an issue.
What I hear you saying is, we can say we don't want it, but they're gonna probably make the.
CHASA is going to make that decision, and I know the CHASA commissioner a little bit. Don't know that I have the kind of influence that some of these other guys that have been, around have. And I think part of it is because we haven't had that would bring some respect. JASA.
Is the CHASA commissioner fairly new?
Yes.
Yeah, his name is Mike Kruger. He's been around. He's been an athletic director. This is his first year. So yeah.
What I hear you saying though is that we can try to stick it out, in which case we're probably gonna get pushed out anyway.
Yeah.
Or we can voluntarily say, hey, you know what, we're done, we're gonna go. And then we're still gonna try to pick up some league games, some non-league games with.
I can definitely fight it if that's what we want to do. Coaches haven't really said they want to fight it. They kind of like to give this a try. It changes too. It's very cyclical. It changes. You guys know how often it changes. I looked at football last year. Football, we were in with Northridge and Mountain View and Roosevelt, and this year we're in with Lincoln and Kennedy. So this kind of does.
So what's your assessment? You were there, you met with.
Yeah.
What's your best guess?
Best guess is that we're going to be pushed out. They want to push us out. They don't want to come here. They'll be happy to have us go there, but they don't want to come here. And honestly, talking with Sterling and Eaton, and Platte Valley was there, Liberty Common was there, which would be our longest trip. They all were excited to have us come in. They would like us to be in the league. And selfishly for them, they would like to push Estes Park out because that's a long trip for them as well.
Burlington's part of that?
Burlington's not part of that, so it's a one. But I don't think they play everybody.
I think they have
I think they have sort of a crossover.
they've got like two different things.
Yeah, they're one league, but the way they set it up is they play closer.
Some sports, they're gonna be, probably those 3A teams are gonna be more competitive than 4A teams will play as well.
Yeah,
Because I just know some of those schools.
yeah. Well, Eaton's
Very
very good at basketball. We play them. We go to their tournament every year for boys and girls basketball. Baseball, they're always up in the state, semifinals.
Stanford University.
University has won it. They won it like 2 or 3 years in a row. Brush is a rivalry. Brush is a natural rivalry. So you know how that would go. Sterling would become a rivalry. Platte Valley, Platte Valley is in state right now in volleyball. They actually have Platte Valley, University, and I think Res Christian and even Valley High School, they are all in the state volleyball championship. They have like 5 or 6 of the 8 teams in the finals, in the final 8. So yeah, they are very good.
And I think if we can, like you said, we can pick up some of those 40 schools, which
Yeah, I know we could pick up
we're not
Roosevelt.
traveling 2 hours.
Yeah, I know we could pick up Roosevelt. Probably pick up some of the northern Denver. Yeah, it's even us the rest of the park, right? That's kind of where we are. If you guys would like me to fight it, if the coaches would like me to fight it, I would definitely fight it, but I think we kind of, how it plays out, I really, I think we can compete playoffs at that level. But I think more importantly, what I want to look at is try to build up our girls' sports. Right? That's a big thing of our girls' sports. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Discussion item C, the 4-day school week update.
If you want to, it's just really, if anybody has any questions or any more clarification from today. And
I think just letting people know, I mean, we've researched the building committee research last year, we had the DAC present session on September 19th, with survey results. We discussed, had it open for discussion here in meetings on October 3rd, 17th. Finally have it as an action item at our next regular board meeting on the 21st. Definitely think it has been. Unless anyone wants to discuss it again right now. All right, we are going to move on to second. We have a motion and a second. Any
resignations that are mid-year policy for damages for that? Do we enforce that?
Not very enforceable,
I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, that we had to demonstrate damages and the expense that outside of your regular workload, which is, am I wrong?
It's, and
Going through that.
position and.
Well, and that, I guess, as I sat and looked at this and with the amount that we have happening, regardless of the reasoning, I think this, in my opinion, is something that I think our district, at least in rural districts like us, need to bring forward as a legislative thing to the LRC, because there has to be more teeth in the consequences, because this is a lot of work to find people to teach, to get them in there, a lot of time and effort, and then to have people resign in mid-year, does put a burden on us. And so I think that needs to be either enforced, or we need to ask for something that makes it easier.
It's more than a burden. I mean, it's a student achievement.
Absolutely.
It's much detrimental to that.
So I don't know what the answer to that is, but
At one point in history,
is we're not going to do it, we need to eliminate the policy that says we are going to do it, because the policy clearly says we're going to penalize one-twelfth the salary if you resign early.
I also think that if we're gonna do it, we inform staff upon hiring that that's what we're going to do. So there is no loophole law yet, so I think that's the intention.
Probably need to address maybe what.
About that. But how do you know before the fact that they're quitting until they're after the fact that they? That's all, the whole retention recruitment.
Aye. Bob Cruz?
Aye.
Amy Grantham?
Aye.
Nancy Hopper?
Aye.
Katie Jess?
Aye.
John Powdy?
Aye.
Mrs. Smith?
Aye. Now we're finally on to action items. First up is the school health professional grant that Fresco was talking about. What is the pleasure of the board?
I move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and
Chris Brown? Aye. Bob Cruz?
Aye.
Amy Grantham?
Aye.
Nancy Hopper?
Aye.
Katie Jess?
Aye.
John Powdy?
Aye.
Mrs. Smith?
aye. Action item B, memorandums. Childhood Center and the Children's Center for Colorado Preschool Program. Someone want it? Good.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion about that?
I would just like to say that having worked over at Sherman and in the preschool department with Esther in the childhood center and having Rosie come over from the Evans program and the collaboration between the two.
Great. I've served on that council. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Brown? Aye. Bob Cruz?
Aye.
Amy Grantham?
Aye.
Nancy Hopper?
Aye.
Katie Jess?
Aye.
John Powdy?
Aye.
Mrs. Smith?
Aye. Online and elementary school, they are listed on there. Beck, Taylor Insurance Agents. Pleasure of the board.
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Roll call, please.
Brown? Aye. Bob Cruz?
Aye.
Amy Grantham?
Aye.
Nancy Hopper?
Aye.
Katie Jess?
Aye.
John Powdy?
Aye.
Mrs. Smith?
Aye. Have newsletters, you have in front of you from Sherman, Baker, Combine, Green Acres, and Pioneer. Planning, we have an invitation from Sherman Early Childhood Center to the Board of Ed for Thanksgiving dinner on 17th, 2022. Education meeting in November is November 21st, 2022. Break is November 23rd through. Board of Education meeting in December is December 12th, 2022.
Quite a lot. You're like, yeah, you weren't just a little. You were like.
Oh, that's wrong.
It looks like. You're not here tomorrow?
Well,